Thanks, Tim. Welcome, everyone, to the first of 6 instructional committee panels on the topic of online quality. My name is Shannon Delgado, and I'm a member of the college's instruction committee. For those of you who don't know, the instruction committee is an elected group of faculty that pursue all things related to instruction and pedagogy at COD. We're charged with directing and maintaining the academic integrity of the curriculum and learning experience and provide recommendations to college leadership. Our motivation for scheduling these panels was to allow for faculty in our area to have a conversation about what constitutes good quality instruction delivery in an online setting. While many groups across campus have given consideration to this topic, we think this is the first campus-wide opportunity to discuss this in a large group setting. I'd like to welcome and thank each of our panelists for volunteering to talk with us today. As with all faculty panels that our committee facilitates, each of our guests will provide a 10-minute presentation followed by a Q&A conversation. So without further ado, I'd like to hand things off to our first panelist, Elizabeth Arnott-Hill. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Arnott-Hill from psychology. I've prepared one single slide that just has boxes on it. So I'll go ahead and share that with you. And because I don't have it in presentation mode, you're going to quickly see what I had on it before I reveal. In terms of online quality, I'm just going to share some of the general things that sort of guide my preparation for an online class and some things that I've learned over the years in converting courses to an online structure. So the first one is just really general, but I think it's really important to consider the basics of how you set up your course. So one of the things that can be really frustrating is if you just try to directly convert a course, you know, the way that you would teach it face-to-face and assume that it's going to transition directly online. I've made a lot of changes over the years. So my online course actually looks a lot different than the way that I approach pedagogy in the classroom. So for example, online, I do a lot of low stakes assignments. So I have a lot of smaller assignments that are due each week. I find that that helps keep my students engaged. It helps them remember that they have to dedicate time to the class each and every week so that they don't kind of get in this pattern of sort of putting it on the back burner. They actually have to engage. And that's on an online class, even if we don't have any synchronous sessions, that keeps them going. Low stakes assignments are also nice because then you can kind of toy with the class in different ways to help your students. So you can work on mastery of material by, you know, taking the highest of a certain number of your assignment types so that you can drop some of them so that your students have a chance to get better and to improve over the semester instead of like big high stakes, you know, tests a couple times a semester. It also takes the stress away. I don't do traditional types of exams in online classes at all anymore. And I find that it's a lot less stressful for me as an instructor as a side benefit. And it's a lot less stressful, I think, for the students. It's, you know, there are so many ways that they can cheat. I think that it kind of almost incentivizes them to find workarounds if there are these high pressure types of big high stakes assignments. So that's just a decision that I've made for my classes and something that I found really helpful. I think my students are still able to show that they get the course concepts in lots of other ways. And with lower stakes assignments where there are more of them, there's less of an incentive to kind of cheat or try to work the system on any individual assignment. I also try to really focus on basics. So some of my basics are engagement or interaction, regular feedback, and clarity. And so for engagement, for interaction, I've kind of toyed with over the years different ways of keeping my class talking to each other and to me. And I'll kind of get to some of that when I talk about some of the technology resources that I like these days. And so I I try to really kind of come up with a culture where they feel comfortable talking to me and with each other. I also am big on feedback. And so this is another reason why lower stakes assignments are kind of nice, because if you don't have these like huge papers to grade a couple of times a semester, if you have kind of smaller assignments, you can give feedback a lot more easily and a lot quicker. And that's also something that I think getting yourself a schedule or a specific rhythm of getting feedback is important. And it's also really important. I have found that it's really bad to assume anything in online classes. So assuming that your students know where the feedback is or how it's being provided, I think is a mistake that's easy to make. And so actually make videos and instructions for how they go in and find their feedback, and they know when to expect that. And that kind of gets to this idea of just like clarity or regularity. So for me, for my online classes, I really try to stick to a really regimented schedule. So they know when things are due each week, they know when they can expect them to be graded by. And they have these benchmarks that are kind of part of the rhythm of the class. I try to echo that in the way that I set the class up in Blackboard, so that there is a really kind of consistent way that I set up the weekly pages, where I summarize all the assignments at the top, and then there are links to each of them underneath for each page. And I do a video at the beginning of the semester where I actually introduce them to all of these kind of structural elements to the course, so that they know how to access things. The second thing I wanted to mention was technology, is technology. So I know, especially in the last year where we've all had to kind of learn new things, you might be sick of learning new technologies. But I think it's really helpful. I try every semester to introduce something new to my class, and I try to target it towards an area that I'm having trouble with in the class or think could get better in the class. So some examples, I really like interaction in my classes, but I hate grading Blackboard discussion board posts. I hate it. I hate the way it's structured. I hate the way it lays out. It's awkward for me to get through them. I know it's awkward for the students to navigate them. I also have trouble getting my students to read the material. And so one of the technologies that I really like, which I'm sure lots of other people throughout the college know about now, is something called Perusal. So Perusal is a system. We have an integration module with Blackboard now, so you can link it easily into Blackboard. Perusal allows you to put videos or readings into the system, and the students can annotate it as it goes. And so they're actually able to comment at different points in the video or at different points in the reading and answer one another. It has kind of a social media commenting sort of feel, where they can like comment directly at one another, or they can send a comment to me. And then what's really great is that Perusal actually will assign them a grade based on its scoring of how often they participate, how many comments they gave, how far the comments are spread out, and it kind of tries to rate the quality as well. You don't have to, as the instructor, you can go in and weight those different things, and you also can go in and see all of their comments, so you can override it before you release it to them. But it is really, really nice because it helps. It really kind of helps give you a jump start on the grading of the discussions. You can also give students feedback kind of as you're going, like, hey, I see you've posted 3 comments. These are kind of lower quality comments, like maybe work on adding some things to them as we work, as we get towards the end of the week or towards the end of the due date. In terms of like watching lectures, I really like UJA, where you can embed questions within lectures, videos that you post. I think that's kind of a nice way of making sure your students are actually watching the lectures that you're assigning. And then one of the other issues, I don't know if anybody else has this issue, but I'm having trouble figuring out office hours in an online environment. It was less of an issue when we were on campus sometimes, but in this like fully online environment, kind of the open office hour thing never works for me on Zoom the way it does in person. And so one of the technologies that I like for scheduling office hours is something called Calendly. So it's not even really like a pedagogical tool in a sense, but it's a really nice organizational tool because it allows students to sign up for 15-minute blocks, and you can edit those blocks, yourself as well. So I have my students sign up for 15-minute blocks in office hours, and they can tell me, do they want to do an audio or video call? What is it going to be about? So I can come prepared to talk. And that is really helpful right now in making it so that I can dedicate the amount of time that I need to different students. And I don't have a bunch of people just like sitting and waiting in a waiting room that end up kind of dropping off. The next thing that I thought I'd give a plug for, so I know Denise is in here, so I promise Denise didn't make me say this, but for online classes especially, I think OERs are a great solution. So I know this can be a really heavy lift in some disciplines. I know it's not a perfect solution for everyone, but I would really encourage you, if you're thinking about making a switch, that you consider it and maybe consider starting in an online class. OER, for anybody who doesn't know, stands for Open Educational Resource. And they're essentially materials that you're providing to the student where they don't have to go through a publisher. This is, obviously cost is a big benefit to the students. The students really like that. Another side benefit that I didn't really appreciate until everything blew up last March and students all of a sudden couldn't go to the bookstore. I know there was a lot of frustration around getting materials. With OERs, that same frustration isn't there because most OERs are available online. And so they're able to access them kind of alongside their other materials. You can easily kind of embed links into your Blackboard shell. And it's just a really nice and kind of seamless way of integrating your materials, I think. And then my just very last thing that I want to mention is feedback and change. So I think my number one thing with online teaching is that when I first started teaching online, I think I believed that you could kind of set up your course really well, and then you're just going to be done setting it up. I think with quality online teaching, you have to just be resigned to the fact that it's never going to be done. Just like in face-to-face classes, maybe even more so. I get myself into a rhythm of changing at least one thing that's kind of bugging me about the class, or that I'm getting consistent feedback from students about each and every semester. I do survey my students, which is something else I would recommend. I don't always take their suggestions. Sometimes their suggestions are, you shouldn't, make me do any assignments, or I don't like to read, or something like that. You don't have to take all of their suggestions, but sometimes even the things that you're not willing to change outright, you can make better by adding resources or kind of scaffolding a project or a written assignment in some way to make it a little bit easier for them. So I would strongly recommend getting regular feedback from your students in some way, not formal feedback, just kind of informal. How's it going? What do you like? What don't you like? And then working on working on some aspect of the course each time that you teach it again. So those are my things. I hope I didn't go over my time.
All right, I think we have Eric volunteered to go second. Elizabeth, thank you. That was fantastic. We appreciate it. Eric, the floor is yours. And if anyone, please, if you have questions, and I hope you will, we'll save those for the end once the panelists are done. So Eric, take it away. Looks like you're muted.
There we go. All right, we're good to go now. All right, let's start this. Well, let me begin by thanking everybody for an opportunity to share, I think, what we all here at the college have a lot of enthusiasm for, and that's teaching in new modalities. And obviously VCM has really changed how we're doing some things, but obviously the online learning has been around for a long time. In fact, I started teaching for Kaplan University back in 2003. So I've been teaching online for 18 years. And it was there that I learned about not just the instructional component, but the course design, what students needed in order to be able to gain access to material. And I brought some of that with me to the college when I was hired back in 2006. Since then, I've been very involved in really finding new ways to use Blackboard. A lot of things I think that Elizabeth described every semester, trying to add elements to the course. And so what I'm going to show are just a few things really kind of at the 500-foot level, because there are a lot of moving parts to every course. But it's important, I think. I've been frustrated sometimes through the years of attempting to kind of cast a particular paradigm in which that everybody should kind of fit into. Your individual approach matters. The courses that you teach will direct how you present the information. So the structure of the course, how you are going to achieve your outcomes, how you're going to be able to achieve your learning objectives really will matter. The way that, let's say, chemistry does it versus the way that justice studies does it is going to be different. And those differences are important, but I do think there are some basic components that we can all generally do that help students succeed. So having said that, I would say, whatever you do, keep it simple, right? When you're doing it online. So I look at this kind of life course for students in a 16-week course, and it's a lot of work, not just for them, but for the faculty. So, and it really does starts before the semester starts. So we are all thinking about how we will set up our courses, whether it's an on-campus, hybrid, online course, or now VCM. So week one, the students are anticipating what they will receive from the faculty member. They want to receive day one, or even before the semester starts, clear instructions about where to go, what to do, and how much time it's going to require of them. So week one is in red because that's when things start to accelerate. Their interest is really accelerating, and we have to capitalize on that week to make sure that we gain their interest. If we don't, we're going to lose a large percentage of those students. Week two, by then we have buy-in, their interest is solidified. I use things like a recorded message. I'm just not going to play the whole thing, but I'll just play an introduction to it here.
Welcome to week number 2 of this course. By now, you should be starting to get the hang of things. And I'm sure you're already seeing and enjoying some of the benefits of taking online class with College of DuPage. Distance learning gives you a greater amount of freedom. With that comes the need for preparation, communication, and self-discipline.
Pause. So I lay that out, and then I give them all of the tools so that they can be more organized, and helping them facilitate an effective learning process throughout the semester. So by week 6, I've noticed in this life cycle, students can start to their interest begins to wane a little bit. By week 8, it reaches a low, and I have packed into the course various activities and various devices that help me revitalize things by week 9. By week 12, we have a pretty good rhythm that's achieved. And by week 16, students are reflecting upon their performance throughout the semester and looking at their grades. All of my courses, and again, this is my approach. It's not a prescription for everybody. All my classes are set up in the same way. This is what I call the landing page. The landing page is important because this is the entry point from which the students will come to class. They see this every time. They know they're here in my class. The navigation panel, which will direct them to all of the consumables in the course, are always organized in all of my classes in the same way. And having said that, I actually use the same platform for my on-campus courses too. So that is my approach, is that I use the technology to facilitate my instructional efforts in the classroom and utilize it for everything that I can't do in the classroom. And this helps me be consistent throughout the entire semester. Students who take my classes regularly say they want to take more of them because they know when they log in, if they're taking a criminology or an introduction to criminal justice or a computers and criminal justice course, it's all set up. They know where to click, they know where to go, they know where to find things. So navigation to me is really important. When they click on the substantive parts of the course, every week they get a folder. And these are not created by a publisher. These are things that I've created, as Elizabeth was saying. These things evolve every single semester, or adding and taking away things. And I'm not going to, this is just an image, but there's videos, there's material, there's research material, there's web links linked in every single folder. It's also because it's online. I don't know if I can open this. Well, maybe I can't. Yep. Let me do something real quick, because I know I can this way. There we go. Every week, let me know if you're able to view this file when it pops up here. Can you still see this, or did I navigate away from it?
I'm seeing the PowerPoint.
You're still seeing, okay. I have to go back in then. That's just a little quirky thing with the Zoom. Any event, so every week I give them, I lay this out. You saw that in the weekly checklist. They click on this, they print this out, they put it on their desk, and this helps guide them through the entire week. So I think this is really helpful for students, keep them on track, make sure they know when due dates are, when VCM sessions are, and I've had a really positive response for our online students. This, again, obviously something different than we would do if we were on campus, but let me go back. Okay, so we'll go back to this. Various activities, same kind of thing I try to utilize, and I'll do it two different ways. You see here that I've embedded a link. Sometimes, yes, Blackboard does have the ability to be able to actually put in the YouTube with a little thumbnail shot, and it'll put it in there, but sometimes I'll just put a link in here. And I try to leverage open source material, government. In our field, there's a lot of government reports, a lot of government resources, and everything is submitted through here. As it was said before, video instructions on how to submit the material at the beginning of the semester. I make those and I make those available. And then I also have snapshots of instructions in the course of make sure that they know where and how to submit the assignments, because some parts of Blackboard, they aren't very intuitive. And so therefore they need a little bit of extra instruction. Assessments, and it's not really evident here, but you can see I have instructions, but I also color code everything. I color code things throughout the semester so that the students know the differences between quizzes, assignments, and in exams. And also, these are, I like the phrase, very low stake. Quizzes that they're taking are not really to test their knowledge of the material. It's a study guide. And this is explained to them at the beginning. All of the quizzes over the entire semester are only worth 5% of their grade. They are encouraged to take the quizzes and utilize those at the beginning of the week and utilize those as a way to figure out what should I read this week. The reality is they can guide their reading, because I don't want them reading about things they already know. I want them reading about things that they need to learn. And in our field, again, this is unique to our field, a basic civics course could give you background and information in some of the things that we do study. So they take the quiz, they use that as a driver to their reading. A way to get them to engage every week, I started doing this semester because I hate discussion forums. I hate the way they're set up. I hate the way the students interact. They're just cutting and copy. To me, it is an absolute waste of time. So I switched over to this, and I utilized my recordings not only for my VCM sessions, but all my net courses as well. So when I'm holding a VCM session, it gets recorded, and then that gets shared with my net courses, and they have to answer just two basic questions. What was the most interesting thing? And then they have to give me where they found it in the recording. And then they also give me an answer to one question that is unique or specific to that particular session. And then I just use a rubric on this. It's very easily graded. And this is just, again, one way to keep them really engaged. I've had various students asking if every week if I'm going to submit these because they really like it. So it's really helped them. And I've seen a difference in my online classes, really seen a difference in how engaged the students are with the material. So rather than just having what I used to call topic form or a discussion form. Again, everything is supplied and provided in a recorded folder. So everything is organized, all the recordings, and they can go back and they can listen to recordings from the past, and they can listen to recordings for the respective week. Built throughout the entire class, communication is remarkably essential. I use Remind, I use Zoom, I use Blackboard Collaborate, I use a discussion forum for asking course-related questions that the entire class might benefit from, obvious email, have virtual office hours. So for me, all of these various tools, which are embedded in the navigation panel, provide me with an opportunity to always remain connected to my students. So there's drawbacks to that, of course. You have to set up boundaries, like with a good relationship. You tell them that at 11 o'clock at night, I'm not going to respond. And they respect that and they understand that. But making yourself available is, to me, for the online student population, is probably one of the most important or critical aspects of teaching. So that is really it. So I'll stop sharing.
Eric, that was fantastic. You were getting a lot of kudos in the comments about the color coding that you were doing. So it looks good, but much obliged. All right, last but not least, Dr. Derek Willis.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about, I guess, the way I do my class. Being online is a lot different from in person, like everybody said earlier, Elizabeth. Online, I find that I give a little bit more assignments, but the assignments are sort of weekly or bi-weekly. And what I do is I'm consistent in that I give people a deadline of Friday. I'll post something up beginning of the week and they have to Friday to submit their responses, like a response paper. They have to do about 5 of those throughout the semester. That's based on what we're reading that week. Along with the readings, I give them movies to watch, YouTube videos. I give them my lecture points. I give talking points. And with talking points, because we're not in the classroom, I do 10 to 12-minute recording sessions, because I find that I'll probably lose their attention if I try to give them a 20-minute shot at one time. It's not going to go well. So I give them like these mini lectures or talking points they listen to every week. And the way I evaluate what they're getting is asking questions. Like I show them a film and I'll ask for a video analysis. And on a video analysis, you're going to do 3 things. You're going to show me critical thinking by being able to summarize what the video was about. And after you do a summary, a paragraph of that, you're going to give me at least a paragraph or 2 on critiquing what were the strengths or the challenges to what the person was trying to convey, or limitations of what they're doing and the strength of what they're doing. And then the third thing you're going to do is show me the relevance. You saw this video. How does this even relate to what I'm learning in this class, to the topics, to the terms that you've been learning about? Show me how these things relate, so that they're able to give me critical thinking skills. And students that are taking my classes, when they start thinking about things this way, they say once they take my class and learn how to critically think like that, it puts them in a position to do really well in other classes too, that they're applying it to all of the classes that they go to now, how to think about things that way. I use discussion board as well to form a community. And I do fewer discussion boards. Maybe I do 4 maybe discussion boards throughout the semester. So they're not every week. They'll do like a response paper one week, and then the next week we're doing discussion board. And then we're going to have exams. And as always, I'll post everything on Monday, and they have till Friday to submit their work. So there's not a lot of, if you're working, you have a schedule, that gives them plenty of time to do what they need to do. And I find that type of flexibility, the students appreciate that, and it's consistent, and they know what's expected of them. And I found out, that students today, they don't like to maybe have a deadline of Saturday or Sunday, because they work or they take the weekend off of themselves. So I give them that Friday deadline, and that way they can have their weekends to themselves or whatever. Other things that I do that are different from in person is, like Eric said, the importance of trying to stay connected to your students. I'm responsive by the email. I can do Zoom sessions with them, like for virtual office hours. We can meet and talk over Zoom to see what's not clicking. I know with my honors class, I'm always checking in with them. They do the readings on their own and things like that, but I'll meet with the whole group, and I'm going to see what are they getting from what they've covered in class. Anything that's not clear, they can talk about what's not clear and clear up anything like that. So Zoom is really helpful in helping clear up any type of issues around what they're not getting. But yeah, I think the rubrics are, I believe in seeing how students have been able to integrate what they're learning. If you can show me what you learned in that current module, if you've mastered that module, you can get maybe up to 90% of a grade. But if you want to get up to 100% of perfect score, you have to do the scaffolding. You have to be able to integrate and see how what I'm talking about this week actually relates to some things that I talked about in prior weeks. So students that connect at that level, they could get like what if they want a perfect score. I say you have to be thinking at that level to get a perfect score, that level of synthesis in the information. But if they show a mastery of the current content I'm covering, they can still get, like I said, 90%, they can get a high grade. But I tell them what they have to do to get a higher grade though, right? So letting them know the criteria that I'm evaluating them on is very important. And like I said, those weekly assignments, it lets me know, are they getting what we're talking about? If I show you something in a book and I talk about it and I'm showing it to you in a film, when you have to write, how much, you have to show me everything, things from my lectures, things from the reading, and things from the video, but you should maybe at least draw on 2 of those in your response. And that lets me know that you were, paying attention and you were able to utilize that information and make sense of it. And I take this applied focus. I want my students to understand how does the things that we're talking about in the book or these theories, how do these concepts fit in the real world? So I take an applied approach. And so they can definitely draw on their real life experiences and draw parallels between what they're learning in the book. If they can see and they can make the right analogy and parallels to their real lives, I reward them for that. And I say, good job. So I try to make it interesting and I try to relate it to what they're doing here. I also want my students to know that what we're doing with today, how they have this saying, there's nothing new under the sun, that these things tie into history. We're, this historical level where we're at in this moment, and letting them know how there's various things that's been going on for a long time. When they see what's going on right now about things like voter suppression today, we could talk about that America has had a long history of trying to reconcile itself with, do we want to be a nation of ideals, or do we want to say this nation is for just US born whites? We've been having a struggle for a long time. This isn't something new. So when they see the xenophobia today and things like that, they can see it within its historical context too. So I'm always getting my students to think about where we're at today, but how this also relates to the history of where we're at as a nation, right? And how with culture, we're sort of using these building blocks, and culture can be both adaptive and maladaptive. And so getting my students to think about things like that, and based on how well they display that, is how I sort of evaluate them, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So those are some of the things that I do. I don't know, I could be more specific, but we've all talked a lot, so I can open the floor up. If people have questions, I'll be glad to answer questions. Yeah.
Derek, that was great. Much obliged. I appreciate your input, your thoughts on this topic. Yeah, we would like to open up the floor now to questions. And if you guys would indulge me, I'd like to take a stab at being the first one. I love that all three of you sort of referenced the dreaded discussion boards. In my, as coming from the field of English, where classroom-based discussion is so essential and central to my classes, that to me has been one of the hardest things to try and replicate or reproduce or reappropriate in an online setting. So I'm wondering if you guys have any tips or tricks or any secrets to facilitating. It's one thing, I think, for the faculty to communicate with the student, but how do you get the students communicating with each other sort of outside of that old-fashioned method where you got to post one response and then respond to 2 of your peers? How do you make a discussion more lively and real outside of that Blackboard, that sort of old and crickety Blackboard discussion forum? I don't know if any of you have thoughts, and I would also welcome some from anyone else in the audience here. So.
I'd like to jump in and plug Perusal again. If you haven't tried it before, it's great because the students are actually commenting on specific parts of text, or it can be different parts of a video, and it'll actually peg in the video timeline where they've commented. And Perusal grades them on their interaction with each other. And so they will comment off of each other and produce these kind of chains. And as an instructor, if you can get in there and comment with them or correct things kind of as they go, it's so much easier to follow than the Blackboard discussion. And because they're discussing the material kind of in context, it's really nice. Now, if that works best, obviously you can't just have a sentence discuss this topic. You have to have a material, you have to have a reading or a video that they're discussing. But I think I just saw Stacy. Yes,
Dana, that-
Wurzel.com. Yep.
asking if you
Yeah,
can-
so it's I can show everybody what it looks like. I'll mute myself, and then Derek and Eric or whoever else can talk, and then I can screen share when there's a break.
I've tried some different techniques to try to integrate third-party programs like Poplet or Flipgrid and try to build those into the discussion practice. It doesn't play out as well though, because students have to do an additional login. And I think there's sometimes a disconnect between the learning management system and Blackboard, where they're supposed to be warehousing all of their statements. And it does produce challenges for grading as well, but I have attempted to do that. The Flipgrid is nice, but some people like myself, I hate recording myself. So I know a lot of students are somewhat uncomfortable. We would think that they're super comfortable with how much of themselves they post on social media, but they really don't like recording themselves as much. So I'm always attempting to appeal to the broader audience because I don't want to leave the 2 or 3 students who may have anxiety over something like that. And I don't want to produce a requirement for them to have to record themselves. But I've attempted to do that, to try to integrate that. And Poplet is a mind mapping software where I create a question, and then on a single page, they can contribute and they can see how their discussion is connected. And I'll go in there and make comments as well. And what it does is it takes the discussion board, which can be rather fragmented, puts it into a single page and allows us to make connections between the various statements and ideas.
Barb, go ahead.
One thing that I found, I have a tendency to use Zoom a lot. And actually, I think even when we go back to face-to-face, I think I may use part of this. We use the breakout rooms for our community class. And basically, they have structured assignments throughout the semester. They're basically program-based. They have to plan various programs for various populations with disparities. And what I found is we meet all together in the Zoom room, and then I put them in their breakout rooms. And before, we used to just meet in the lab, and that was our lab exercise, and it was loud and everyone was talking and no one was staying on task. It's amazing how when we got these small groups together in their breakout rooms, how much they get done. I mean, I've been teaching community health for many years now. And like I said, it's always, it always has a tendency, somebody walks into the room, somebody walks out of the room, all that kind of stuff in the normal classroom setting. Here, they're very focused. And then they come up with great ideas. And then what I do then is I hop throughout the whole lab period between all the breakout rooms, and I can answer their questions pretty much immediately. And then they get more time to talk about it. Then I go to someone else, then I come back, and that seems to have worked wonderfully for me. I mean, I feel the students are getting their work done. They're on task. They literally have a better chance of critical thinking and collaborative thinking. So that's what I kind of do. Sharon.
Yeah, I was going to say with the discussion board, sometimes I guess it's the right question. I know near the end of the semester, I asked this question about artists and athletes, and then using their voice, their platform to advocate for things like for justice or whatever. And I get the class, they really light up and they get excited and they chime in and they can show local examples like in Chicago or different places, but they're able to connect with it. So the questions I have asked, if it resonates with them, they do a really good job of chiming in and really building on what each person is saying. And they've learned to integrate history too, and not just talk about what the current people are doing, but knowing about the people from the earlier periods. When they start talking about people like Billie Holiday and Strange Fruit and things like that, I'm just so impressed with how they've done their work. So I think asking the right question that piques their interest and they get excited, and that's been some of the better discussion boards, is if I've asked the right question and then the discussion board sort of comes to life on its own. Yeah.
That's great. I've asked to have them post a picture. For example, we're talking about social disorganization. I asked them to go out and get an image of social disorganization, and posting images can be a real great way to get them to engage and to think about it. And then they happen to start commenting on each other's images.
Eric, did you say that you use Padlet Was that the?
I'm sorry, Poplet. Yeah, I went ahead and posted the link to it. Yeah, it's a mind mapping software. I've used it for years. It's really come a long way. The site's much better now than it used to be.
Are there any other questions out there? There must be. Jim, go ahead. You're muted.
Oh, I want my PowerPoints to be more interactive. I don't know if anybody can help me with this. I have a lot of PowerPoints that have videos. I've already embedded my audio files, you know, me lecturing on what they're looking at. But what I want is, like, every few slides, I want to be able to pose a question, like a multiple choice question. And students would have to actually select an answer. And if they get it right, then they get points automatically put in their totals in their My Grade sheets. That's what I want. Anybody can help me with that?
I'm seeing H5P posted in the chat.
I think Learning
that?
Tech could probably help you with that, Jim.
Yeah, H5P is something that's integrated with Blackboard, but that takes a lot of front end work. I've seen Google Slides work very well.
But you guys understand what I'm trying to do?
Yeah. So in the math department, we use what's called Learning Catalytics, which is they have that. It's kind of like Kahoot. And so that would be also another option is Kahoot, which is like a polling type situation where you can integrate it with your PowerPoint. But I think even now you can even download a template into your PowerPoint that offers Microsoft Forms where they can do multiple choice type questions. I know you can definitely do that in OneNote.
OneNote. All right.
Yeah, and one of the things that could also be done, and it's kind of a competing session right now, is that in Usia, you could also have your video pause at certain points where you could have it pause for a question where students would answer before they continue on with it. There's ways of integrating that with the Blackboard Grade Center, but there's also on Usia a place to see kind of a breakdown of who has gone through the video, what their answers were, things like that as well. So I think there's another session next week on using, it's a training provided by Usia, where they are going through the kind of the best practices for setting up those video quizzes in that system.
Okay, you keep using a word there. Is it Usia?
Usia, Y-U-J-A. And that's pretty much, you can think of it as a closed YouTube environment for COD. It's a COD licensed sites where you could upload your video files, even large course files, things of that nature as well. Yep.
But my question is, I want it to be so interactive where they actually have to participate. Go in, answer questions that I pose, and if they get them right, their points are actually automatically added to their grade sheets. I mean, that's what I'm ultimately looking for.
Yeah, there is a way to integrate it so that those video quizzes will populate your Grade Center column.
Okay, somebody sent something here, so let me go there. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm gonna go to this link.
Hey, Mike, do you know if Edpuzzle will integrate with the gradebook in Blackboard?
Edpuzzle, one thing with the free license, I know that there's, with the free accounts, you're restricted to how many basically times it could be distributed. So I'd have to look into that a little more. That's one that is also integrated in Blackboard. So there's an integration for Edpuzzle, which would include some of that as well. So
the only reason I offer that is I did a summer semester where I was doing what he was mentioning, which was they watched videos and interacted with it. And the interaction between Usia and Blackboard and the gradebook was not pleasant.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing too. One will kind of gauge a little bit more of students taking it, but it's also not a kind of typical quiz where they only have one chance. So they could go in into multiple times and take it. But that's one thing too, it's a little more hidden, and I'll have to go back to the recording of what Usia recommends today. But there is on the Usia site a lot more in-depth kind of recording tools and keeping track of some of this information when students take it.
Am I hearing any other questions from the audience?
For the panel, there's lots of mentions of using these online interfaces that are not controlled by the College of DuPage. Is there any worry of selling of student information or any worry of potential problems later on as far as, you're a member of the College of DuPage asking students to use these features even though they may not protect the student's identity?
Short answer, yes. There's always a concern of that. I think most of us probably lean towards those third-party software that are dedicated towards higher education or high school level education, and but I don't think anything we do with Google or any other company, I think there's always a risk that students are going to have their information traded one way or the other. I don't know that we can provide them much of an assurance as it relates to information security.
This is kind of anecdotal, but I've polled my own students about that very issue, and I think so many of them have just sort of indicated they really don't care because they are so involved in the virtual world. Their information is out there. I mean, we do talk about like being sort of cautious and protective, but they're so used to using technology and many different kinds that they're sort of, to them, it's like, no big deal. I don't mind signing up for Remind or a non-COD system. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to echo what Eric says, I mean, I think that is always a concern. When I integrate technologies, I try to make sure they are technologies that have kind of passed muster in the educational environment. Most of the technologies have like gone through learning technologies and they're, integrating them into Blackboard and things like this. So I know that's no assurance, but, I think in today's world, it's really hard to assure the students that their data is going to be 100%. So.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with both what you said. I know for like things like discussion board of social media, I've had students, if we're talking about a subject that's controversial, they've asked if they could just talk with me, maybe one-on-one, as opposed to publicly posting it, because they didn't want the whole group to, I guess they're worried about the whole idea of cancel culture, if they say something the wrong way and this and that. And I explained to them that, yeah, we could talk about something, you should in a different forum where everybody's not there to sort of, to do that. But I tell my students that this should be a safe space, that we can agree to disagree sometimes and how to be respectful. But if they feel a little still leery, I provide them another avenue, just talking to me more one-on-one about what they were thinking about. So because they're worried about this whole idea of cancel culture today. So I give students this idea of, making sure that they're in a safe space, trying to create a safe space for the students. And that's what I try to do. But with something like he said, Google earlier, you're right, you cannot guarantee that won't be shared in other ways. But yeah, that's a good point. But thanks, yeah.
Other questions? Comments? Criticisms?
So was Liz going to show us a little bit of perusal?
Yeah, Liz, do you mind doing that?
Yeah, let's see it.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Just because, it might have logged me out. Give me a second. So I don't want to show you one that has my students' comments in it. So let's.
Are there any ones from research group that don't have any ones?
Yeah, well, I have one that was like a test shell here. Okay. Yeah. So can you all see this? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is one where there aren't any actual comments in it, but this is an example of one that's set up as a video. And so what the students do is they start playing the video, and then at whatever point that they want to make a comment, they just click add comment and they comment here. If someone else has made a comment, they show up as these little yellow dots. So you can kind of skip forward to comments if you're looking for a specific comment. And then if somebody replies to you, you actually get an email saying like that shows you the comment that they made, or they can have a new comment where they do where they flag you in it with like the little @ symbol, like they would on social media, so that you know that there's a comment or a question for you specifically. And so they lay out just over here on this sidebar as the students are watching, so they can see the other comments here that are unfolding. They can stop and comment themselves wherever they want with the material. So they can ask clarifying questions, they can throw in their own examples. And I find that the students are really good at kind of doing a mix of reactions, right? So sometimes they ask questions that where, I don't understand this, or what does she mean here? And then there's, the other, portion of the time they'll actually make a connection to something else, an application. Oh, this makes sense given real life, or I learned about this in a different class. And so the way you set it up, you just add materials to your library. So you can add videos, you can add podcasts, you can add PDFs of materials. So you put it in your library, and then you assign it, and you can embed it directly into Blackboard. So when you click on Blackboard, it launches the site. And it launches you straight into the system. As an instructor, there are a lot of settings, so you can adjust how their grade is allocated by perusal. You can, let me see if so you can set up, like, for example, whether or not it takes takes comments late, how much their grade is based on their own the quality of their own comments versus their interaction, how important it is that their comments are spread out over the material, so they don't just do all their commenting on one section. You can set how many comments they need to have for a full grade. So the default is 7, but like for statistics, for example, I have them watch these videos for statistics, and intro statistics class, students don't have a ton of burning comments. So I set it at 4 for that one. If it's a longer reading in a more advanced class, I might set it for something like 10. You can also put them in groups. So they're kind of in smaller groups where they get more comfortable kind of interacting with one another. So this is my default. Is I usually have classes that are full, like 30 to 35 students. And I usually set my target group for 10 so that they're roughly in thirds. So does anyone have anything else you want to see before I stop sharing? That's kind of the brief overview.
Elizabeth, can you go to where the videos, where you would upload a video? Because there was a question about like video file types. So yeah. So here's the kind of overview. So we have had, or Chandra and I have had to troubleshoot some videos, but typically anything that's like on YouTube, that's very, very easy. It can be a little trickier going from other systems, especially sometimes it flags you because it thinks that you're uploading, it might think that you're trying to upload like copyrighted content. So you've got to be careful about how you get things in there. Did I miss another comment?
Oh, so you have to upload. I'm sorry. Am I interrupting someone?
Oh, can you actually click on it? The video thing, I think they want to see like what types. Yeah, if you click on that, that might help. Yeah.
Oh, so you don't have to upload the video. You can put a URL in. But then if it was something that like Canopy that they have to log into before they view the video, then they probably wouldn't be able to use it in Perusal. Oh, that's a bummer. But maybe do we have an institutional account to Perusal, Mike or Lara? Do you know? Yeah, like embed codes or something like that. Christine, that's a good point. Sorry, I'm all into this Perusal right now. I'll shut up.
Well,
yeah, I know there's an integration. I'm not sure of the license that is that goes along with it, though. Oh, and Laura mentioned that don't have a license, but they're basically the free version is what's included in the integration.
Well, why can't we get a license? Yay. Let's do that. I could do that.
Yeah, that's one thing that we'll see. And actually with the LT steering and online quality committees and things like that, integrations is one of the things that we're looking to focus on. So yeah, definitely we could see what's possible in the future as we go through all the things that are available right now.
Nice.
I love it. I think it's great. Elizabeth and Chandra, can I ask you a question about in Pressbooks, which you guys are very familiar with, there's a tool called Hypothesis that seems similar, and you guys reviewed it closely and then decided to go with Perusall instead. Can you tell me what the downside of Hypothesis is? Or why Perusall is better?
I remember having a lot of trouble with Hypothesis. Or Chandra, do you remember we had a really hard time getting, I think it was, we were having trouble getting the comments to stick, right? So we would annotate it, and in terms of like putting people, you know, in Perusall, you're like in your class. And I think we even had trouble amongst the three of us who were all like users on that Pressbooks thing. There was something that wasn't syncing. So it could be a technical issue that just like we didn't figure out, but we had a really hard time getting it to work out from what I recall.
Well, if we have a hard time, then the students are going to have an even more difficult time. So yeah, I guess it just wasn't the best tool. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions for the panelists? We're nearing 4 o'clock here. We sometimes go beyond an hour. Sometimes we're an hour and a half, but this has been a really, really thorough and productive panel. Any final going once, going twice?
So I would ask all the panelists, you know, with all the experience you've had, everything you've tried, what do you think for each of you, what is still kind of, what do you see as still your biggest challenge with online quality?
I think my biggest challenge is just that you can't shake the student in person. Not that I would ever shake a student, but you can't get in their face and say, hey, you know, why aren't you participating? Like you can't draw them out in the same way that you can in person. So I think if they want to hide in an online class and they don't want to be found, they can not be found pretty easily. And I realize in face-to-face, they can just not come to class. But I think it's just easier for them to sort of push it off and pretend it's not there in online classes. Like I had a student on Monday that emailed me and said, I have 2 other psychology classes and I just forgot I was enrolled in your class. And that's after countless emails and announcements and just, you know, as much as I can reach out to him. So I think that's still the hardest part of online classes for me.
Yeah, I would, something related to that, that is definitely true, but it's really about that our classes and our teaching isn't just about teaching the material. It's about all of the other unique relationships that we establish with our students throughout the semester, and we help them be professionals. We help them have new ideas about directions and careers that they might pursue. And that's stifled a bit in the online environment. That personal connection is definitely a lot more difficult.
Yeah, like that personal connection that Eric and Elizabeth was talking about, that's an important concept. I find that I have students that are really engaged and they'll ask me questions by email and things like that. And they'll really maximize my time and expertise. But the students that are not that way, in the classroom, I can sometimes, you know, stick around a little bit later and I can pull them over to the side and we can talk, you know, one-on-one. And I can gauge who is like that, you know, in a classroom, who maybe they're shy, and I can have time with them on the side. But when we have 100 students, and it's the people who are, you know, good at advocating for themselves, they'll come out and talk to me afterwards and get more information about, like Eric said, you know, about learning how to be a professional and things like that. I try to put it in the lesson plans or when we talk about things, my talking points and things like that. But yeah, there's nothing like when you can see someone in person and you can gauge things. You sort of miss out on that. But outside of that, I think that's what I miss most. Yeah. Good question, Christine.
All right, I think that's actually a good place to end things. I want to extend for a final time my thanks and gratitude to Drs. Arnett Hill, Ramirez Thompson, and Willis for being here. I think this was a really, really good way of kicking off these panels. We're going to have 5 more. In fact, tomorrow we're doing nursing and health sciences, and sitting on the panel tomorrow is Barb Coe from respiratory care, outstanding faculty member in that area, Melissa McGovern in nursing, and Ramsey Wilson in surgical technology. So if any of you found this worthwhile for your own needs in SBS and you want to learn from another division, I encourage you to show up tomorrow. So 2 o'clock, same time and place. You can look in Cornerstone for that. So thanks to all of you for coming. I will work with Jen Kelly to get this posted, and hopefully we will see you guys at more of these over the next couple of weeks. So thank you, panelists. Have a good one.
Organizing it. Appreciate it.
Yep. Everybody be well. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Tim and Jennifer and everybody. You guys have a great one.